The Project of Mr. Glimmer, or Reflections on the Absurdity of Intellectual Pride. I, your humble chronicler, must confess that of all the human vices I have observed in this unhappy world, none elicits such a mixture of admiration and sorrow as intellectual pride. This affliction, which corrupts the human mind, leads a person to believe in his own grandeur, a belief wholly unsubstantiated by any rational proof. I once had occasion to observe how one of my acquaintances, a certain Mr. Aloysius Glimmer, was struck by this very malady. Being a man by nature of an inflated self-esteem, he took upon himself a project which, as I had foreseen, was bound to lead him to utter ruin. Chapter 1. The Emergence of a New Prophet. Mr. Aloysius Glimmer was a man of middle years, yet his mind was filled with ambitions so great that it seemed he wished to create a new world. He lived in a modest house, where his sole companion was an old, half-blind cat. His only treasure was his intellect, which, sadly, he much overrated. One day, at a reception held by the local vicar, Mr. Glimmer, with a proud look upon his face, announced that he was working on a universal method for the correction of the English language. He contended that our current tongue, in its present state, was far too primitive to convey the full depth of human thoughts. Therefore, he, Aloysius Glimmer, had resolved to create a new, more perfect version of the language, in which every word would have a logical foundation and every sentence would be mathematically precise. Chapter 2. The Marvelous Machine of Words. His project was so intricate that even I, a man accustomed to absurd theories, found it difficult to comprehend. He had created immense charts and diagrams where each word was divided into 10 parts, and each part had its own unique meaning. He called this the algorithm of language. He claimed that if we were to use his method, we would be able to eliminate the ambiguities, lies, and prejudices inherent in our ordinary speech. His days were spent in constant contemplation of his project. He ignored his friends, his family, and even his cat, which seemed to be the only one who had any common sense. He spent all his money on his project, and, what is most sorrowful, he spent his very soul. On one occasion, I visited him in his home. He was surrounded by papers, books, and diagrams. His face was pale, and his eyes burned with a maniacal gleam. He began to speak to me of his project, using a language so complex that I, despite all my education, could not comprehend a single word. "You see," he said, "my words are perfect. They are precise, like a mathematical formula. They have no ambiguities. They are the truth." I, a man accustomed to common sense, could not help but feel that his intellect, which he so cherished, was far too convoluted to be truthful. Chapter 3. A Spectacle for the Public. After several years, when his project was complete, Mr. Glimmer decided to present it to the local intellectual society. He rented a hall, invited all the respected members of our town, and, with a look of great pride, took to the lectern. His speech was so complex that it seemed no person in the hall could understand a single word. He spoke of paradigms and algorithms, of metaphorical constructions and analytical models, using his new, invented language. I, observing this from the side, could not help but feel that this was the most comical thing I had ever seen in my life. Some of the attendees, so as not to appear foolish, nodded their heads, pretending to understand everything. Others, to be frank, simply fell asleep. And some, like me, simply watched the spectacle, which was a true exhibition of intellectual vanity. Chapter 4. The Fall of the Giant. After his speech, when Mr. Glimmer, expecting a standing ovation, descended from the lectern, he was met only with silence. No one dared to tell him that his project was pointless. No one dared to tell him that his universal method was merely a collection of empty words. He, in his pride, could not admit his defeat. He declared that true genius is never understood in its own time. He accused all those present of ignorance and lack of knowledge, and, with a haughty look, he left the hall. After this incident, his life went into a downward spiral. He lost his friends, his reputation, and, most sadly, his dignity. He became a recluse, living in his home, surrounded by papers and diagrams, and the only one who understood him was his old, half-blind cat. Chapter 5. The True Meaning of Pride. This story, like many others that I have observed, once again confirms my opinion that intellectual pride, while being the foremost of human vices, is also the most foolish. It forces us to abandon common sense and compels us to believe that we are greater than we truly are. The story of Mr. Glimmer is a clear example of how pride can destroy a person. It, like any other disease, begins with a small seed and then grows until it has destroyed everything that was genuine within a person. So, dear readers, do not be surprised by intellectual pride, but simply observe it as a comedy and remember that the best cure for this affliction is humility.